kind of forgot how much I love,
Making stuff.
making stuff, like really being there for the
Yeah.
making. And things have changed as a salesperson again and saying,
Yeah.
hey, this is fantastic. I love it. Will you give me money to make it? That's basically my job.
Welcome back to SmarterUmedia, the only place on the interweb that guarantees to make you smarter in 2 minutes. I mean, we guarantee it or we'll give you your time back. That's impressive. It's a banner day at SmarterU today. We have one of the great film producers of this generation with us. Tracy Trench has worked with the biggest stars. She's made some of my favorite movies, and she's one of my favorite absolute people. She was also chosen by DreamWorks to open up their Asian studio in Shanghai. So we have more to talk about than we'll know what to do with. Tracy Trench, welcome to SmarterUmedia.
Thank you, Steve. So I've known you for many, many years, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, that is probably something that we're going to have in the chat bot so everybody gets to ask those prying questions. You know how we do this. We don't wait. We get directly to the point. So you have come prepared with something that's going to make us smarter in 2 minutes. Our fabulous chicken timer is ready to go. I'm going to add 2 minutes. And with that, I'm going to let you make us just a little bit smarter.
Okay. So I thought about this, and I think this piece of advice that I got that I didn't necessarily follow very well happened when I was younger. And I'll sort of set the stage, if you will. So I was a creative executive at 20th Century Fox, which means that my job was to read a lot of scripts, books, look at ideas, and figure out if they were going to make a good movie. I was in the film division. And another part of my job as a junior executive was that I had to service the executives who were, higher level than I on their projects.
Right.
So there was a lot of busy work, a lot to do all the time. And at one point in my job there, early on, one of the heads of the studio said to me, "Do your job like you own the company." And I was kind of taken aback by it because I think of myself as someone who's servicing other people's visions and, or I thought of myself then. And I'm also pretty analytical. I wouldn't say that at that age I could show my passion a lot in my work. It was more like I was really good at story analysis. I was really good at kind of looking at the audience and thinking, okay, this is something that would make me laugh, or this would be meaningful or make me feel something. So I slowly, over the course of my career, I think took that advice in different places, but can really point to the places where I didn't. And I think the biggest place that I early on took it without really knowing it was my partner, whom you know, who's a documentarian and who was a teacher at the time. This Proposition 187 passed in California, which is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing that was going to disallow children, immigrant children.
Okay. You don't have to stop. In fact, please don't. But we're just going to hit that and get rid of our chicken timer. He says if anybody wants to leave, they're ridiculous, so they can go. But we're going to keep you around for a long time, as you know.
At least I got to the point.
Great piece of advice, but I don't want to interrupt the story because I'm so interested where we're headed. So go ahead. There you were.
Yeah. So I'll make it short. But what happened was, I'm a junior executive at Fox. I'm working hard diligently every day. And my partner is a teacher who, at the time when Proposition 187 passed in California, a proposition that was going to bar immigrant children from going to school and getting healthcare. And that was something I was passionately against. And in the suggestion from my partner, not from me, it's her idea, to do a story, which would basically serve as a teaching tool for the teachers of the LA Unified School District. She said, I need to get this down and show teachers how this is affecting kids, just so they can be sensitive in the classroom. So I cobbled together everything I could through the studio. I sort of begged, borrowed, and maybe stole a little bit to put together the crew and the editing and everything else that we needed. And financed and produced this film, which we didn't know at the time was a film until we sent it to Sundance and it got in and it won a prize. Yeah. So that was really like, for me, the lesson that said, your passion can really do everything for you in life, finding that thing. And even if it's not your thing, if it was really more my partner's idea, but I could facilitate it, I was passionate enough about it to get it done. And the result of which was my bosses at Fox, rather than saying, what are you doing moonlighting during your job and making something, they were shocked that it won Sundance. They said, oh, you can deliver a meaningful story on a budget.
Right.
And why don't you take this project that you've been developing ever after, this Cinderella story starring Drew Barrymore, and why don't you now transition and go produce it in France? So,
wow, what a story.
Yeah. So that was, for me, like when I was really thinking back after you asked me, what is it that I wish I had done more of or known more of at that age? I kind of took her advice, the boss who said, do your job like you own the company. I kind of took it without knowing it, but finding passion in whatever you're doing, to me, was something that really served me over my career.
Nailed it. I mean, honestly, I love that start because there's the whole area of study in academia that talks about something called entrepreneurship. There's this whole, as you know, this is all brought together by the Alderson Griffin Center for Family Business and Entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. But there's a subset of people who have to be entrepreneurial. They happen to work in large places like 20th Century Fox. And if they don't do that, they will not find a way to get to those levels that you've found your way. It's best possible advice. I love the way you say it. Say it one more time so I can remember.
Bringing passion to what you're doing, no matter what it is you're doing, especially, we're probably talking here to a lot of people who are newly joining the workforce, right? Do you think?
I think we're talking to all kinds of people. So I think it's people who want to be curious. We believe that's what we do. Smarter U's about no matter where you are, we can always learn something today that makes us a better part of the world. So it's that broad. But yes, there will be large college graduate student audiences as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And I think, soon thereafter, I was not an executive anymore. I was a producer, and I took a couple projects with me, including this amazing marching band film called Drumline, which I loved and I had been developing, and I didn't show enough passion for it. And the same person that had given me the advice, do your job like you own the company, took me off the movie as a producer. And that was bad. That was bad for me. Like, you think to yourself, what did I do? I didn't think I did anything wrong. And when I really looked back on it many years later, I thought, I just didn't show the necessary passion for the project. I didn't go out there and fight the fight for it.
Well, I think it leads to another thing too. Mm-hmm. So it's so fun to be the guy who gets to interview, because then I get to just take us wherever I want to go. But one of my favorite books these days is something that was written by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's the story that you just told, which is we're all going to have stuff happen. Right. Mm-hmm. So often when you see someone up on the dais talking about their great success and how it was all, they tell you the flowery parts. You get the Facebook version of life, as opposed to, look, man, we all have stuff that comes down. There are times that things like that happen. You're taken off of a movie, you're devastated, and you can handle that by letting it crush you, or you can find the next thing and move forward. I think you have a great example of how you do that. So after that, what did you do? What did you do when you got taken off?
So after that, I if I recall, I think that I just poured my focus and passion into the things that I had still in my hand. like realizing that, that at some point in my journey on that particular project, I think I just really hadn't taken ownership over it.
Yeah.
I hadn't treated it like we try to treat everything that we do, like it's an entrepreneurial endeavor. It took me a long time. I wrote down entrepreneurship because I love that idea. But I realized every single project, even though I didn't think about it at the time, later I thought, oh, those were all startups. They were all startups. They were all things
Yes.
that I needed to apply some basic principles to. And I also needed to think about, okay, the people paying for the movie, which was my boss, my former boss who, gave me the adage, do every job like you in the company, um, that I had to convince them as investors that I was going to deliver something great. And
Yeah.
I just set about saying, from now on, I have to do that.
Yeah. And, I don't think there's any better proving ground for raising, making an entrepreneur than the film or television business. I really don't, because
Interesting.
there's never a place with sort of more pressures or more, you have to be creative. You have to make something from nothing to everything. And then usually you have to break it down, right? It's
Mhm.
all that you can imagine that gets wrapped up in that. And I think it's an incredible proving ground. It also adds story. So you and I are passionate about stories. We believe and know that they move our lives every day. And whether you're working in a company you just started in some city or some town or some place, you have a story. Stories are all around you. If you don't get it, you're going to miss it. So tell me about story. Tell me about what attracts you to stories, not just for film, but in life.
Mhm. That's a really good question. I think most of the time for me, what a story has to have is it has to make me feel something
Mm,
that I didn't
yeah.
feel before. So I'm always looking. It took me a while also to kind of get in touch with my feelings when I read a piece of material or when I watched something. I knew whether I liked it or not, but I couldn't always completely articulate why.
Mm,
And I think, getting to the place where you can be analytical, but you also have to be pretty articulate about what you felt, at each point in the story, because at some point, even if you're reading it and thinking about it as a, I don't know, a short form piece of content or a TV show or a movie, at each point in evaluating it, you have to be able to tell the creator, because I don't create. I might have an idea, but someone else creates it. You might have to tell the creator, like, this doesn't, I'm not feeling this character. Like, I'm not in the movie with this character. I don't understand why they're doing this. That's usually the thing. Why is the character doing this? So for me, it was all about, and it continues to be about, evaluating character, looking to see you know, what an engine is that's driving me through a story. And that's usually, if you're pitching to me or someone's pitching to me, that's passion. It's usually passion that drives
yeah.
me through the story, right?
Yeah.
But transformation, having the feeling that, I like happy endings. I think we all do. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely drawn to storytellers who are passionate about their stories, but even people who are not dispassionate, but are sort of neutral in their presentation. If their material makes me feel something, then that's great.
Yeah. And the power of story imbues everything that you and I do, not just in the entertainment business, but everywhere else. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the skills. That's why I say they're so portable, I think, over into other spheres. If I find somebody who has on their resume that they were a line producer, oh, I love that, because that's somebody,
Yeah.
who had to take whatever came in and they had to actually make the thing work. And
Hmm.
that's remarkably rare and harder to do than we imagine. But it happens every time. You have to find teams to go back to that will be able to deliver, and they have to treat their job like they own the company, or you're in trouble.
See, I like that analogy because it's very pragmatic, right? It's like it's saying you can take any situation and kind of, the truth about line producers is they all want to tell the story. They really
Yeah.
do. Like they're
Yeah.
frustrated because people don't look at them as being storytellers. They look at them as being the person who ordered the crane to be there on the right day, or the right camera equipment. So, um, and and they want to be telling the story. And I think the way that so many line producers do that is that it's kind of going back to what we were originally talking about. They find the meaning in taking ownership of what they're actually contributing, right? So they don't just yearn to be the producer or the director or the writer. They say, I'm contributing to this team. And that's kind of the beauty also of what you and I have done, is when you make creative product with a team, it feels very blue collar, and I mean that in the best way, where everyone's rolling up their sleeves and doing things, and you're makers, you're building, um, but you're building toward this north star that everyone understands.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're in this really rare environment it's hard to do that at a startup. It's hard to say we all understand the north star and we're all building toward it, because you know, not only does it change so much all the time, but you it's very hard to do that when you're iterating. When you have a movie, you've got a script, you go into the process, you make it together, everyone works together. It's kind of beautiful. It's really, I like the feeling of that kind of, of being that kind of maker.
It's one of the few places I know anywhere that actually has a list at the end of the product of
Mhm.
well, not maybe all of the people, but a lot of the people who made that product exist. And you could go through anywhere in life. You could literally walk up to a can in the grocery store and pick it up. And if you dared to look at the credits for that can, the people who made the stuff that then was cooked into the soup that became the stuff that was in the can and took the truck and drove it over. We all live in what Thich Nhat Hanh would call we enter be. And that is everything that we participate in is reliant on so many other people and so many other parts
Mhm.
of the universe. It's a beautiful thing that film and television actually recognize that, though we just go through it now after when we're streaming.
Exactly. And that's when you say that, because that's something I didn't realize when I was younger. I did not realize, it took me a long time to realize, oh, like people are watching me. I thought I was operating in a vacuum of,
Yeah.
I'm just trudging along, trying to get my stuff done and everything. And it took me a long time to realize, oh, no, 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 I'm part of this greater whole. And people are relying on me, people are watching what I'm doing, people are reacting to me.
Yeah.
And I was clearly just felt like, oh, I'm just reacting to them. So it was a weird realization for me. I don't know how old I was when I was like, oh, wait a second. I need to be more intentional about what you just said, the
Interbeing. Yeah. And collaboration. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things. You will not make a major motion picture without a grand collaboration. It is the
Mhm.
equivalent of, starting, like I said before, from nothing until all the way to the end. And it sometimes the biggest work begins after the stage you think of making a film ends. You
Mhm.
finish production and you go, we've made a movie. It's like, oh, I'm sure when you and Laura were making the Fear and Learning in Hoover Elementary, I am sure it felt great when you got it in the can. And then there's just so much work after
Mhm.
that. There's just so much.
There really is. And And so the last 10 or 12 years I've been spending doing uh, content, always content oriented, but building businesses around content.
Yeah.
So, and that's different from one off producing. First off, because you have an umbrella of money above
Right.
you
Right.
that you're responsible for, but it's not, it's not like the startup where you get X amount of money to make your movie and there is no more. In a way, when you're building for Discovery and Amazon and other people, there's just, there's more in the pot there. So you don't feel like you're flying without a net. But, you know, circling back now recently, so I helped to other people get their content made then. But now, more recently, looking at, I kind of forgot how much I love, you know,
Making stuff.
making stuff, like really being there for the
Yeah.
making, instead of, help, you feel good helping somebody and you get a thank you and all that. But
Right.
I thought, I want to circle back to this a little bit, which I've just begun to do a little bit more. And it's really, it's been really fulfilling, and things have changed. So, I realize that, in a way I do have to relearn some things in going out as a, kind of as a salesperson again, and saying,
Yeah.
hey, this is fantastic. I love it. Will you give me money to make it? That's basically my job.
Well, we talk about this, you and I, but that's sales. Everything is sales. If you think you don't have anyone to sell to, in your daily life, you're probably not looking around because
Right.
everybody's got someone they have to convince to allow the thing to happen. So
Yeah, that's
it's
very true.
so many avenues I want to go, and I'm just going to launch down one of them. As you started us off by saying, treat your job like you own the company. And then you just said that you have been sort of in the business ecosphere more than the filmmaking ecosphere for a bit of time. We live in the time where there's a phrase that I think is very deceptive. The fake it till you make it
Hmm.
is not a corollary of what you said, because I think it's very different from what you said. But I'm just going to say that much and say, what's the difference? How do we parse it? Because that can lead to a really tragic ending, as we've seen again and again.
Yes, I agree with you. Um, I'm actually not very good at faking it. And maybe in small ways, you
Yeah.
confront a little bit and say, that you know things that you don't know. But I would never, and I'd be really bad at presenting a situation as other than it is, so especially if someone is putting something up and it's going to be a risk for them, you're asking them for money or you're asking them for their time or
Right.
anything,
Yeah.
um, that kind of misleading to me is just not worth it. It's if that's where you have to go, then you probably aren't doing the right thing. You probably aren't running down the right path if you have to fake it too much. You can the real thing, I mean, this is the exact opposite, is just saying what you don't know, just
There's
saying
power. It's incredibly powerful when you
incredibly
are
powerful.
open and honest with someone in a room. My favorite story I've told you for anything being sold was the Win Ben Stein's money pitch, where they just hated what they brought in. And the executive said, do you have anything else? And they said, Win Ben Stein's money. He said, I'll buy it. And that was it. That's how the show got bought. But
That's the way it used to be.
it was being really, it's hard to get anything on. I mean, we'll get to that, because
Yeah.
I think it's easy once you've reached a certain place to feel like that there's everybody can do it at this level, and that's just not the case. I mean, you've got to start somewhere, and you've got to take time to build, right? You got to take time to build your career and find your way. But I want to go back to the fake it till you make it. It's become one of those things that I think fits into the ethos of business communities, entrepreneurs, people who want to create
Mhm.
something. I think they somehow think that is the way. And I would suggest, just like you did, that it takes you down a path that more than likely you'll hear the story where it worked, because that person's going to say, oh yeah, I faked it till I made it. But you're not going to hear all the stories of what really came to so many of the others who went that direction. Find
It's
your find
so
your
true.
honest place. Yeah.
It's so true. There's 1 in 100, I would say, whom it works for.
Many, many more. I think the odds are way even. Yeah, I think but again, you don't hear about it. This is one of those self-selecting things. It goes back to the story that you and I were talking about, which is story itself is only heard if it's heard. If the story falls in the forest, nobody will see it in the theater.
Right,
Right? I mean,
right.
it's just, it has to get through. So anyone that you see who's invited to come and speak to you about the great path that they took and all of those sorts of things, we should wear a cloak of skepticism every time we're having one of those conversations, because it's self-selected. It is the very small minority, and nobody tells their story the way it really happened. Nobody.
Exactly. I mean, you remember when you were on the playground and you tripped and skinned your knee? It was so embarrassing, and no one wants to have that. No one wants to talk about that again when they're in business. It's embarrassing
Yeah.
when you fall, and you know. But honestly, the um, the I'm not going to say the words, but the BS meter of the world is very, very attuned to faking it.
Yeah.
Most people are very attuned. And if you're pitching to sophisticated people, they get it. They'll see right through you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really true. And I've spent time advising public and private companies, and I've had those discussions where somebody says, well, we're thinking about saying this and whatever. And I said, you are now at a public company, you're going to talk to an audience that's going to know more about this market than you do, and
Mhm.
has known more about this market for 20 plus years than you do. And you're not going to sit in a room and do anything other than tell your story as best you can, and get away with it. So I'm with you. I think that's absolutely true. Tell me about the business stuff. So when you found yourself more leaning toward the business side than the
Mhm.
film side, what brings you to that? Right? It's exciting. I love the business stuff. Is that part of it? It was just an allure. It's
Yeah,
fun to create business stuff.
it's fun to create. Like whenever I would be on a set back in the day, I would always say to the writer, or I often said to the writer, look at all these people. None of them would have been here if it weren't for you.
Yeah.
None of them.
No, that's great.
And 150 people on a set, right? And they're all making money. So I kind of felt the same way when I started. Kind of, I was part of the small team that went over and found, the basic structure of DreamWorks Animation in Shanghai, and then built that out from 40 people to over 200 people, and then it
That's
ultimately
awesome.
sold to Universal. And that coming back to LA from that, and wanting to bring my girls back to go to school here and all
Yeah.
that, I kind of thought, wow, that was really fulfilling. It was satisfying and fun, and I
Yeah.
wanted to do it again. I just thought, how fun would
Yeah.
that be to be on a small team again that takes a great idea and builds it out into a viable business. So yeah, and an ongoing business. Movies are ongoing, but we don't nobody who makes them really gets to continue participating in a meaningful way. It's really the distributor that does. But with business, you can build something and have it go on and on like you did, and
Yeah.
and that's huge.
Yeah, to see the World Poker Tour 23 plus years into its crazy world, all over the world, doing its thing is unbelievable. It's addicting. I mean, I'm telling you, this creating stuff, when you get a little taste of it, when it works, like you did with DreamWorks Shanghai, when those sorts of things happen, it's hard to sort of find a way to find something else give you the same juice. I feel a little bit like I understand a gambler better than I ever did before,
Mhm.
because it's hard for me to find other spheres that serve that same purpose in me.
That's true. That's very true. It is a gamble, and you have to be careful how much you stake on new ideas, right? So I do remember circling back a little bit to the, having passion about your idea. I don't know if you remember telling me this, but I remember when you said that you were going out on the road show for World Poker Tour to go public,
Yeah.
and the investment bankers said to you, I don't know if you have to be so passionate, you know,
I
and
don't remember that at all. That's so
yeah.
funny.
And they said, because they were used to these really dry, sort of, here's the business, here's what we're
Yeah.
doing, here's what it is. And you're a storyteller. So I'm sure you were telling a great story. But I remember you saying to me, the investment bankers told me, you don't have to be so passionate. But I don't know how you don't do that. And
Yeah.
clearly what you were doing absolutely worked.
Well, obviously I didn't pay a lot of attention to that, but I will tell you, I will tell you that those experiences are incredible because you don't have them other places. To go walk into a room, we've created the business. Now we're going to tell you what's going on, and you're going to decide whether to have your broad array of investors invest money in that thing because
Mm-hmm.
we're going to grow. Here's where we are. Here's what we think we're going to do next year. Here's what we hope we're going to do the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Those processes to me were really lovely because it drilled down into some things that maybe were part of my past world, like finance, like math, those sorts of things, and really lit them up again. It's sort of being able to participate in that part of the process was terrific. I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
that story at all. That's so funny. Yeah, I
Well,
do
that
remember.
worked. I don't, yeah.
I do remember going back into those rooms afterwards. So you have a presentation and then you have 20-minute meetings, 20-minute back to back to back to back to back, where in large companies that have investment groups come in and talk to you. And that was the ethical spot of the World Poker Tour where they would come in and say, okay, now, what haven't you told people? It's like, what?
Oh, wow.
What? I believe that's the way that works a lot. And I got to say, well, you really don't want me to give you non-public information that you can trade on, do you? Which would end the conversation quickly. But the
Yeah.
answer is yes. That's the way a lot of those things actually probably work, but not in my world. Let's go back to. I really want to highlight some of the things that are remarkable and remarkable, not about career, but about you. And the reason I say that, I know because you just recently told me a story about your father was a teacher in the school where you attended. I think it was high school. Is that
Yes.
right?
High school. He was a high school US history teacher.
So he clearly believed in education, led you down a path. You went and unfortunately couldn't get into Dartmouth, so you had to go to Harvard. And I understand
Yes.
that's the way.
I love Dartmouth. Good school.
That's the way that worked. But then went and got a fancy education that is rarefied air, but you chose while you were there to learn a language. So undervalued in the United States world of education. Talk to me about how you got to Shanghai from an education that led you into things that the rest of us just can't do.
Interesting. Yeah, it is a little bit roundabout. So I was an anthropology major
Of
because I
course you
got a
were.
C in organic chemistry and decided that I couldn't be pre-med anymore because I'd never had a C in my life. What I tell my daughter who's pre-med now is C's get degrees, baby. Go be a doctor.
C's get degrees. I love it.
um, but so what happened was I switched over to anthropology. I graduated in anthropology, and I was going to go to Berkeley to go get my PhD in anthropology. And my advisor, who had advised my thesis, said, "You need to go out and live. You're a girl from a small town in Indiana. You need to get out there and live some life." And so I kind of thought, well, where's the furthest place I could possibly go and just be such a fish out of water from an anthropological perspective that I have to kind of sink or swim. And so I moved to Beijing and became a teacher. And
Wow.
so while I was there, I taught English, but I learned Mandarin.
Yeah.
And by the way, there was a big gap between, how much Mandarin I knew at the time and anybody who spoke English. So it was a lot of pointing and
Sure.
nodding. But I ended up loving that and deciding while I was there that this was an incredible place and that ultimately I wanted to do business with Asia. And I thought, how am I going to do that? I don't have a single economics class under my belt. I don't have anything. So I just thought this place is going to explode, which it ultimately did, of course, in the
Yeah.
intervening 25 years. And so I took the GMAT in Hong Kong and came back and went to UCLA to go to Anderson and get my MBA because I thought, oh, I'll go and and it'll have a Pacific Rim focus. That's what they used to say back then. And I ended up in between my 2 years of graduate business school. I honestly had not calculated, having lived in Asia, how much it was going to cost to live in LA, and I ran out of money.
Wow.
And I went to my advisors at UCLA and I said, I need another student loan. I can't, I want to
Can't
finish the
survive.
second year. And they said, well, it was at a time they're like, we don't have it. You've got what you've got. And so you kind of know this story. So I just went, well, what can I do? I got to finish my degree. So I went on the $100,000 pyramid and I won the $100,000 that
Yes.
summer.
Yes. I love that
and
story.
and I just was like, I practiced, I played the
Yeah.
board game, I did everything I could. I had all my friends from business school were quizzing me, and I ended up winning, and I could pay for the rest of my school. And part of that kind of sucked me into Hollywood, honestly. And I stopped having this Pacific Rim focus or China focus or Asia focus, and I
Yeah.
got sucked into, I worked at CAA as a story editor, just doing a lot of research for directors, and I just got hooked. I went on the set
Yeah.
of Alan Parker's Come See the Paradise as a researcher, and I just thought this is the best thing ever. So
Yeah.
I started doing that. But then in 2008, there was a writer's strike, and I had nothing to do. I couldn't make things. I tried making a couple of reality shows, and I didn't like doing that. And so I started looking back at Asia. And the way I did it is I went downtown to the Hong Kong Trade Development Office and I said, I know you have a film festival. I know you guys run it. How about if I bring really great A-list talent and we do I was trying to get a free trip to Hong Kong to go to the
Yeah.
festival because I thought this is a good market for me to focus on since this market is, not happening. And I don't know for how long.
Yeah.
And so they said, great. I did it, went over the first year. And Jeffrey Katzenberg found out that I was there bringing writers over to do roundtables. And that was that. So that's kind of how it happened. And I remember saying to my partner, my wife, Laura, I end up saying to her, Jeffrey's going to make a deal with, China and they're going to ask us to move. And she said, oh my gosh, Hollywood and China, that deal is never going to close. Never. We are not going. And, 5 weeks later, boom, we were living in Shanghai. So yeah, that's how it happened. It was it feels roundabout, but they were all things that I was interested in. And I always say it was almost like always having to reinvent because of necessity.
Yeah.
Out of necessity, just like
Yeah.
what can I do now that I've hit this wall? I can't just stand here by the wall,
I just think that's got to be highlighted. I have to just pause for a minute because I think the stories that you're telling are beautiful in a lot of ways, and there are many layers. But one of the things that I find very endearing and touching is the fact that you're honest enough to talk about sort of the walls you hit, the places you go, and than what it is that gets you to another place. And I'm going to articulate it this way, and I'm sure it's wrong, but I always tell our kids, pick a path and start walking,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of don't wait, don't be inertia, be momentum,
I
and
like that.
definitely find a way. So for you to be, there's nothing going on, it's 2008, writer strike, and to then sort of find a way to approach a community that gets you in the mix. The discussion then leads to Jeffrey Katzenberg. And by the way, it's been a while for some people. So DreamWorks SKG, the K is Katzenberg.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is how those things happen, but you would never draw those lines. So when you say it seems circuitous, it's the way maybe everything is. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
really live in a world where serendipity, luck, and the way things work probably more aligned than we want to imagine.
Mm-hmm. It's true, and I think I'm incredibly lucky, and at the same time, I think about, well, had I just waited out the writer's strike and not tried to do something, then my luck wouldn't have been as good. It just wouldn't have,
Yeah.
it just wouldn't, it would have been impossible. And I love what you said, or what you say to your kids, because I have two kids graduating, twins graduating from, as you know, graduating from college. And right now I think, just because of the economy and things that are happening, and what jobs are like, and I think there are probably many reasons to feel paralyzed, and I think it's going to be same for them. It's just going to be about, even if you're, just keep moving, because even if you're moving in a direction that it might not be totally the way that you end up, it will help you get to the next spot.
And I would add that if anyone tells you that they knew where they were going and that's where they wound up, they are not being straight with you,
Right. That's true.
because it has never worked that way. We may explain it later, we may find ways to tell that story that work for us, but it's just not the way it works. You head off. And I hope, and this is one of the great things about education, big thing, education, right? If you get education, and today you would ask yourself, well, why? Because I have AI. Why? Because I have ubiquitous information all over the place. And the answer is because it will lead you to things you wouldn't have otherwise found. And your
That's
life will be richer if you do those sorts of things. So it doesn't have to be a college. It doesn't have to be a fancy college. It doesn't have to, whatever it is, some sort of educational commitment every day to make yourself better will lead you to stuff that you will find would never have been a part of your beautiful trajectory.
I think that's very true. And I mean, many different kinds of education. You don't
Yes.
have to go to a fancy school. I
Yes.
mean,
You don't
I
have to go to school, though it's still a great thing, but you don't have to. You don't have to put yourself into crippling debt. Please don't, right?
exactly.
Find tools that serve your purpose without giving you a challenge.
Exactly. And now it's not about going on the AI tools and being educated that way. There are actual formal ways
Yes.
to do it, that you don't have to have a huge outlay,
Yeah.
and you can still have interactivity with, uh, I mean, honestly, people who know more than you do. And that's what you want. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like I've been able to do that throughout my life, is just try to keep learning and try to keep growing. I'm endlessly curious. My daughter was telling me about a book, I think called Tremors, she just read, which is about, keeping your curiosity throughout your life. And I thought, oh, that's so key, because as soon
Yeah.
as you kind of think, oh, I'm bored in my job, or I don't really like what's happening right now, or I'm not appreciated, my boss doesn't appreciate me.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, that's kind of on you. I think, unfortunately, to sort of figure out both how do you get more meaning, in what you're doing every day, and how do you infuse everything you do. I guess circling all the way back to the beginning with a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
It's your life. It's not might not be your company, but it's your life. So.
And the word do, I think you should say to yourself over and over and over and over again. Do
Mhm.
something. Just do something. If you're upset about the way something is that you wish it weren't that way, do something. You don't have to be the person that discovers the vaccine, but do something. And I
Mhm.
think, regardless of what the impact is in some macroscopic societal level, it's better for you. You will feel better if you wake up in the morning and you head out to do something, either not just about a cause, but that's for your own life. It's sort of, if you want to head somewhere, go find the people that are the people you'd like to
Mhm.
be around and find a way to get in their world and be there with them, because that's who you'll become. Promise you.
Mentorship. I was talking to the head of cardiology at UCLA, who's a neighbor, about mentorship, and he was saying, I'm trying to kind of reconcile the fact that I'm getting older, and I'm
Yeah.
and I work with a lot of younger people. Should I be more of a mentor? Should I join the mentorship program at UCLA's med school? And what should I do, or should I just spend my time being really, really, really great at my job? And that's my form of mentorship, because I have interns and residents and everybody else
Yeah.
watching me. And I kind of felt like either way, whatever works for you, just be
Yeah.
open to those people who want to be near you,
Yeah.
because sometimes mentorship is, hey, you mentor somebody about tactical things, knowledge, and other times it's you mentor them because they just want to they just want to tell you how they feel. They want to be heard, and they want to see somebody who's maybe like them, who is has carved a path. So I think this is great what you're doing with the podcast, because what it can do is you know without really knowing who's watching it, it can provide a little bit of mentorship, right? Um, without that sort of completely direct involvement, and sometimes that works too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. I'm not going to stop, because there's another whole area that I want to talk about. So if you need to get some water or something, feel free. I have.
Yeah, I'm fine actually.
Okay, because I we've touched on a number of bits that have to do with technology. And it's really hard to talk to someone who has been at such a interesting intersection of technology, story, and commerce like you have, without really diving deeper. So I want to take a moment just sort of to reflect on the change. You mentioned it. Technology has made storytelling a night and day experience from when you and I began telling stories.
Mhm.
So let's start there, but with a target for heading toward sort of what the opportunities are and the way that you look at those markets today and the opportunities they provide.
So if you look at the pieces that make up how you build content, you have ideas, you have script, you have a structure, and then if you're working in live action, you do have to shoot real people, but you also have tons of visual effects now. You have animation, which is about is mostly made in the digital realm now, and all of those pieces are impacted by new
Yeah.
technology, and basically generative AI, which is soon going to be able to be used at scale for both words and images. So
Yep.
so yeah, big impact.
Well, it's big impact. I wanted to get some of the let's tell the old story things too, because if you look at where it is now and what it used to take for when you made the movie that you that led you to be a film producer. When you rolled up your sleeves, said, here's a story I have to tell, you found a way to do it. But the technology was so hard that it was so hard compared to now, right? I
Really
mean,
hard.
tell that, because it's one of those perspective things. This is not a long time ago, but the difference between buying an Avid to edit that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars
Right.
to having better software by far with more capacity for everything that you can get for a couple $1,000s is mind blowing to me.
It's huge. I mean, so back then you had to you had to rent the camera because no one could afford to own that
Yeah.
camera. You had to find the right media. So you had to, we couldn't afford to shoot on film. We had to shoot on video. We had to find the people because we had to record sound completely separately and sync it
Yeah.
later. We ultimately had to edit, in an Laura, the producer director, who, basically took a weekend Avid editing course. And then I got her an Avid at night on the lot at Fox. And I would lay on the couch reading scripts, and she would sort of muddle through and cut together an assembly of the movie. And, you had to you really did have to beg, borrow, and steal because the barrier to
Yeah.
entry was high.
Yeah.
And, cut to now, we could have done the whole thing on a phone,
Yeah.
you know,
Crazy.
easily.
Yeah.
And, maybe some lights, maybe. Yeah. I mean,
Maybe,
maybe. Um, but,
yeah.
but I mean, even when we got into Sundance, because I said, oh, can you dump that down onto a tape so
Yeah.
that I can look at it later. And without telling my partner, I sent it to Sundance and it got in. And then we thought, oh, what do we do now? Sundance doesn't project. There were no video projectors then.
Yeah.
So you had to screen at Sundance on film. So I that was the $17,000 transfer.
Yeah.
And I
Transforming. It was
to
called transforming. You had
yeah,
to transform it into film.
I didn't we didn't have that like just sitting around. So I went to the chairman of the studio and I said, this is kind of awkward, but I did this, you know, on the side, and this is what
Yeah.
it's about. And it got into Sundance, and I we can't screen it. And literally, Peter Chernin, amazing, I'll never forget it, reached down into the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out this corporate checkbook, with the big cover, and wrote the check for $17,000. And that was it.
First of all, Peter Chernin, and I haven't seen him for 300,000 years, but is one of those guys. He's a
Mhm.
really, really extraordinary guy.
Yes.
Oh, what a
That
great
was,
story. I've never heard that story. I haven't heard the checkbook opening up in
isn't that
Peter
crazy?
Chernin's office.
I was
That's a
shocked.
great
Shocked.
story.
I thought it was going to be a lot of cobbling and stuff. And oh, you can use this and that, and you should talk to this person. No, he's just like, here you go. I would just couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So yeah, and that, I mean, does that kind of support still exist?
Yes.
In these
Yes.
corporatized structures? I hope
Yes.
so.
Yes.
I hope
I'm
so.
telling you it does. And the thing we should take away from that story is that you did that. I mean, it's so often weird. So I can't believe some parts of this story that I didn't know that I'm now finding out. But you were on the Fox lot. I was at Paramount
Mm,
in between movies to be able to edit the film that you were making your film and I was making my film. And that's how we met.
yeah.
But it was done because of the goodwill of people who care to help people do meaningful things.
Hmm.
If you don't hear anything else from the time we get to speak together today, please, everyone, hear that message, which just is there are people all over the place who always want to help you. And you may not find them the first time. It may not be the first office you walk into, but you will find them and you will get a chance to do your thing. And if you don't take the chance, you walking into Peter Chernin's office is something that not everybody would do, but we all oughta. we all ought to be willing to believe in the thing we believe in and show up and take the chance.
Yeah, scary. It definitely, I mean, was it risky? Not, no, because ultimately it was him, but yeah, it was scary for me. Definitely.
No, but it's scary for all of us. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that if you look back, yeah, it's easy to look back and sort of go, well, I just walked in. And I know that's not it. It's walking in, it's the sweat on the palms, it's the things that we all as humans experience that get us, across the line because we dare to just take a step. That's how
Mhm.
you don't win the race if you don't take the first step. You just don't win the race. It's inspiring. I'm inspired.
I was so glad.
Yeah.
Well, from a technology standpoint, I think part of what all artists are dealing with now is how does this affect how does this sort of really rapidly advancing technology, which, it is really excellent now. If you look at the bar graph of
Yeah.
what generative AI is good at, it's very excellent at predicting the weather. That's its top, you know, uh,
Woo!
woohoo. And at the bottom is creative,
Yeah.
originality. And but that little tiny bar at the bottom of all these other things it can do is growing rapidly,
Yeah.
and it's the worst now that it will ever be, right? It's only going to get better.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's well, how does that affect people who are already in the business and, at a
Right.
certain level, but more so, how does it create opportunity for people who would love to be making more
Yes.
content and creating
Yes.
things and building?
Yes.
I
Yes. Yes.
mean,
Yes. Yes.
I think it's excellent. I don't think it should, I'm sure that, because I also am part of the transition to industry um, uh, mentors at AFI, American Film Institute, and I've been on panels with people who are really vehemently opposed to any use of AI, and I think for me, it has to be used with responsibility and it has to be used with proper
Sure.
credit and all those things. But if it allows more people and different types of people who may not otherwise have opportunity to tell stories, then more power to it.
I I think you can pretend that you can ignore it, but I don't think that will work for short, medium, or long term.
Hmm.
And so I agree, use like every tool, you should use it responsibly. But who knows where we're going to go? I mean, you look at stories, who knows what that means? And when every new technology was brought into storytelling, we used to just sit around the fire and that was it. And when
Hmm.
we learned how to write, think about what that was. I mean, just
Right.
taking script and being able to write all of the things that we rely on now. And then when you get the printing press, and then all of these advances, you would, from any society, you would see, oh my gosh, threat to everything. And the answer is yes, this is a threat to everything. But look what we've done all the way along the line. I love
Hmm.
your optimistic vision because that is exciting. The exciting part of this is really exciting.
It is very exciting, and the part of the business of storytelling that I've been in is it has a lot of hierarchy. It has a lot of, you know, difficulty to breaking in. It still has gatekeepers that, they're the distributors of your content. Otherwise, no one will see it. Although now we have YouTube, which is great, and TikTok. We're really, I see great storytellers on those
Yes.
platforms. But that part of it has always been the drawback for me, is that you end up getting a lot of the same kinds of stories because all the same people are telling them,
Yeah.
and it's just not as interesting as when you start getting a really interesting mix of a lot of people's backgrounds and senses of humor, and the way they see the world is different, and they also have the power to speak to people who are like them, and so that perpetuates itself. You get more and more variety, more and more of a just an interesting flow of
Yeah.
ideas and stories. So I'm for it used in a responsible way for sure.
And it changes things, and change is hard. So I think to admit, to understand that when big changes happen, even in how we tell stories and the like, there will be a lot of people that will be disconcerting to. But if you talk to your kids, if you talk to my kids as they're graduating from college and in that age group, I can tell you the things that they participate in are not completely different from what you and I did, but a lot. I mean, it's very
Yes,
different, and they have what I would consider to be a higher standard. They expect more, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
I agree. I agree. They do expect more. They expect more. They expect more quality. They expect more
Yeah,
thoughtfulness.
yeah,
I mean, in a way, we got away with a lot because,
yeah,
there was a very small pool of people, you know, building things, and a lot of people our age look back and say, oh, those were the heydays of making content. I actually don't think so. I think it's now.
I think it is. I think it is now. I mean, it's hard to imagine with these tools and these possibilities that there are more of us. One of my favorite stories is Harold Clurman. That may be a name that means nothing to you. He was one of the great acting coaches of all time. And he was in a class with a student who asked a question, and he said, raised his hand, and he said, Mr. Clurman, I think the real problem is that we have too much bad theater. And Harold Clurman said, well, young man, you've missed the point. He said, what we need is more bad theater, because we will never have great theater unless we have more bad theater. And I
That's
think,
awesome. I
isn't that
love
awesome?
that. Yeah.
And I think that is 100% the time we live in, because when I say that our kids can have a higher level of expectation, it's because there's so much. They don't have to rely on a small subset of people to make material for them. They get to choose. It's not always great. I mean, sometimes we can, human predilections can take us to not great places,
Mhm.
but that's back to the responsibility pill that I hope we will all try to find a way to locate and take.
Yes, agreed. And that you're right. That is one of the biggest fears is that people say, "Oh, there's just going to be this huge mass of terrible stuff, coming in, terrible, generated novels and articles and short form and animation and all this." And I love. I didn't know that anecdote, but I think that's very true. Let
Yeah.
people. Nobody's first project is great ever. I mean, like, you know,
Yeah.
my I think my wife's documentary is fantastic. It's great and I give her all the credit for it. But she had already had some training. She
Yeah.
had. She had
Yeah.
had a little bit of training before she became a teacher. She'd had training in storytelling. And
Yeah.
so she knew what she was doing. And she had to kind of go through that to get to what, they always say an overnight success. It never is. You have to make those things that just probably aren't very good until
Yeah.
you're going to make something good.
It's the 10-year overnight success that I like to think is
That's
one
right.
of the best, one of the one of the best tracks.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when you hear those stories, I always love to hear the overnight, very long success stories, because it reminds us that not only did it take longer, but the person didn't stop. This persistence thing matters. What you talked
Mhm.
about, and finding ways when you hit a wall. How do you climb over it? How do you go around it? How do you dig under? What do you have? What are you going to do? Those to me are very meaningful parts of the life process.
Definitely. And I don't, you hear overused. There are a lot of overused words in trying to pump people up for life, like,
Yeah,
resiliency, grit, all these things. And they're very
yeah,
generalized. I think I like what you came down to, which is just keep moving, keep
yeah.
moving.
Keep going. Pick a
Yes.
path and start walking. All right. I could talk to you forever. You know this because I've almost talked to you forever. And so I'm just going to go back. We end the Smarter You media world with something that gives us help to find information better. We feel like it's all over the place and sometimes it's overwhelming. So something that has been useful to you in your life that we can take with us as we hit the road.
To find information better.
Yeah.
Well, my mind first goes to all the new tools, but everyone knows those, I think, already.
Yeah.
A lot of the new research tools that are all generative AI, but that's not where I get my best information. That's where I organize my
Okay.
information.
Here it
So,
comes.
so I get my best information from people, for
Yeah.
sure. From
Yeah.
people who've either are ahead of me, have done it before, are coming up, or I know that they've had issues or problems. Like that's where I get my best information. I just start just reaching out, and also as a callback, just saying, I don't know nothing. Please tell me. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know about this particular thing. I wonder if you can tell me.
Be willing to ask and engage. And humans are an extraordinary resource we don't use enough. I
Yeah,
think I love that answer. Yeah.
exactly. All
All
right.
right. Tracy Trench, it is so good to see your face. Thank you for coming on Smarter
Same
You. And
here. I'm excited. I love this. I love
I,
that you're
I
doing
do too.
it, and I think I'm excited. I wish I knew who was watching. That would be fun.
Well, we'll send all of them your number. No, give me a call. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we always say, today, stay curious and stay open. Thanks for showing up, and we'll see you next time.